Hello, everyone, and welcome to APTAT webinar covering accessible social media. First, thank you to everybody who was able to attend our live session for this webinar, and apologies due to the technical difficulties that we had that we were unable to finish that webinar. I've decided to just go ahead and re-record the entire presentation just to keep things consistent. So thank you to all of you for your patience for me to be able to re-record this information for you. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And let's go ahead and get started. First, I want to share the slides with you. It's going to be a bit.ly link. So it is going to be bit.ly/accessible social media APTAT. And that's going to be a capital A for accessible, S for social, M for media, and then all capital letters APTAT. And I'll also make sure that I have a link in the video description. So first, accessing potential through assistive technology. We are the Alabama AT program. So we are federally funded through the 21st Century Technology Act. And our job is to increase knowledge, access, and acquisition of assistive technology. We do this through several different programs. I'm just going to list them here. And then if you want more information about them, we'll have some resources for you at the end. So our programming includes short-term device loans, a reutilization program, trainings, technical assistance, and resources for financial assistance. So before we get started, I just wanted to set some expectations for today's session. So this is not going to be how to use social media. So if you've never created a post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you don't know the difference between, a story and a reel and all those things. That's not what we're doing today. Really what we're going to be providing is a review of good accessibility practices in creating your social media posts. If you're familiar with looking at accessibility guidelines and creating digital content, this will be similar information, but through that lens of creating a social media post and some other things you may want to consider when creating your social media posts. We're going to provide several examples and show you a walkthrough for alt text and image descriptions, camel case hashtags, URLs, emojis, and designing graphics. So when I talk today, I'm really going to be using Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as my main reference points. However, when you are looking at what makes a good accessible social media post, all of these things really will apply to the other platforms that are out there. We just focused on these three because they really do have the large, number of users. And these platforms have unique needs based, for different posts based on their need. So, Facebook tends to be more about community and discussions and having that opportunity for people to comment and dig in a little bit, where Instagram, is great for visuals and to grab attention and have people engage. And at least for me anyway, Twitter was, at least previously, a good source for up-to-date information, news, learning from my peers and what's the latest trends and topics. So we're going to get started with tips for writing good alternative text. Now, for those of you who may have attended one of our previous webinars, we know that alternative text refers to the text that describes a digital image that is in your content. So if you've posted a picture on your website or in a social media platform, if somebody is visually impaired and they use a screen reader, by you adding that alt text allows them to know what that picture is. Otherwise, they would just hear graphic or image through their screen reader, and they wouldn't actually know what you had posted. So when we're writing good alt text for these posts, there's three things that we want to remember. One, it's all about context. So when we're like, what should I include? What shouldn't I include? Again, it's all about what are you trying to convey and what do you want the viewer to learn about the picture. Being clear and concise. and we'll talk a little bit about the difference of um, some other organizations. You'll see like NASA and the Hubble telescope write these really beautiful, long, descriptive image descriptions. But that's because you're looking at, a galaxy full of thousands of stars. But it's also written in such a way that it's as tight as it can be, but really still painting that picture for you. So really being clear and concise, getting to the point of it, making sure what's important for your viewer to know that they know. And then lastly, don't forget to add alt text for your GIFs. I say GIF because GIF is a peanut butter. So, but when you add your GIFs to your social media posts, those don't get alt text. So if you add it, potentially your viewers with visual impairments aren't going to see that GIF. So the example I have here is from the National Park Service, and this is on their X account. And I really like this one because it kind of, for me, covers everything except for the GIF because they don't have one in here. But I'm going to read the caption to you. So this is the actual tweet that they posted. It says, "It's not the heat that gets you, it's the dinosaurs," and then a dinosaur emoji. And then we have this beautiful picture in front of their national monument sign. And we see it looks like there's a ranger with his head stuck in the mouth of someone wearing the inflatable dinosaur costume. And so when we look at this picture, it's really nice and pretty, but down at the bottom left corner, you're going to see this little image almost over top of it says alt, so ALT. Saying alt as in alt text. So when you're viewing this, regardless if you use a screen reader or not, if you click on that alt, it will actually pop up the image description. And that's what I have over here to the left. It's actually that pop-up. So when I click on it, it says image description, costume inflatable dinosaur and a park ranger have an awkward encounter in front of the Dinosaur National Monument sign. Photo by Pamela Emmons. So it's great. It lets me know what the alt text was for somebody using a screen reader as a sighted user, but also it's nice for me to know, hey, I can see which orgs are actually adding alt text to their images. What I really like about this one too is it shows what was important for them to convey. They didn't talk about this big, beautiful cloudless sky. They didn't talk about the mountain ranges in the back. They didn't talk about the brush and the grass and the rocky terrain or anything like that, because that's not what this picture was about. They just kept it to what this picture was about, which was them just having fun in front of their sign with somebody getting to wear a costume, etc. So next I want to talk about image descriptions in your caption or in your post directly, instead of going to find, where do I add the alt text? Where's the alt text menu? And there could be some good reasons to do this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the example first and then read through why you might want to do these things. So this example is, again, from the National Park Service. They were just go follow them. They've got great stuff on there. And especially I love reading their image descriptions and their alt text because I feel it really does provide a good examples. So I'm not going to read the whole post, but I'm going to describe the picture a little bit, and then I'm going to highlight what they've done with their image description. So here they have a picture of a ranger. It looks like he's wearing a jack-o'-lantern on his head with his hat on top. He's posing in front of the rocks, and he's got this beautiful pumpkin that they've carved, it looks like a tree, into. And in their post to the right of it, it goes into this wonderful fun post about, coming to visit, etc. But right underneath it, it says image, a ranger wearing a carved pumpkin head at Joshua Tree National Park, not a pumpkin person wearing a ranger uniform. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you. And this is great because it really does a couple things for us, right? It helps others to kind of be in on the joke, right? So if I'm a sighted viewer and you have this picture, and I didn't use a screen reader, I wouldn't get to have this lovely text that they've added here about, just wanted to clarify it's not a pumpkin person. Um, one of my colleagues was talking about how, when she posts pictures or comics or things like that, she likes to have the image description in her post or in the caption, because sometimes some people just don't get the joke, or they're missing out on maybe that one little spot of the image that sells the whole thing. um, the other nice thing about being able to put your image description in your post itself is you're creating a space where everybody's having truly equal access to it, right? I'm not having to click on something else to view it. I'm not having to go rely on my screen reader that hopefully they've added alt text to it. Um, so it really just kind of makes that environment for everybody. Now, if you decide to do your image description in the caption, just remember you got to pick one or the other. And it's actually the reason why I also picked the National Park Service is because my first example, they used Twitter, and they put their text or their image description in the alt text, because Twitter, you get character limits, right? So there's nowhere else for them to really put it, because the minute they put that image description in, they've eaten their tweet. But Twitter has a way for us to pull that alt text fairly quickly for them. But if you're going to put it in the image description, as they did here in their caption on this page, you don't need to add to the alt text through Instagram. So pick one or the other. So if you're doing Instagram or Facebook or something else like that, where you don't have to worry about character count as much, and you decide you like having it in the caption area better, that's fine. Just then don't worry about adding an alt text, because all you're doing is making somebody with a screen reader read it twice. Okay, so next we want to talk about camel case or Pascal case for your hashtags. And so what that means is that you want to capitalize the first letter of each word to show separation. So I'm going to read my example of my hashtag. I'm just going to spell it out first, because then you'll see where it's going. So it's going to be hashtag SUPERBOWL. Okay. Underneath that, you see two examples. It could be hashtag Super Bowl or hashtag Superb Owl. Those are two very different things. And so by not having that capitalized letter, I'm allowing my viewer to maybe misinterpret what I'm trying to convey. When it comes to acronyms, we want to make sure that we're capitalizing all the letters of the acronym. So my example here, my first one is APTAT, which is Accessing Potential Through Assistive Technology, and I've went ahead and capitalized all the letters in our acronym. The one below that is actually a conference that we helped run this past year, and so I've created the hashtag for 2024, and that is AT Alabama 2024. My AT is an acronym for assistive technology, so it's AT, and then my Alabama, even though it's not part of that acronym, it's a new word, it will still be capitalized. So it's capital A, capital T for AT, and then another capital A for Alabama. So over to the right here, I have an Instagram post from the MAD Museum, or the MAD Museum, excuse me. I'm not going to read their whole caption, because I really want to focus on their hashtags, which I have created a image underneath where it zooms into those. But in their post, their caption, they're talking about their exhibit of Funk You2, Humor and Irreverence in Ceramic Sculpture. So it's talking about how it's going to have these 50 artworks from the 1960s to the present, etc. So now let's look at their hashtag examples. Their first one is Funk You2 MAD. It's great. Capital F, capital U, capital T. Their acronym MAD, capitalized. Next is Funk Ceramics. So capital F, capital C, beautiful. The next one, 1960s ceramics. I don't know what that word means. When I pulled up this example, it really did. I stopped for at least half a minute trying to figure out if it's ceramics, if it's some other form of art I don't know about. Um, and then I realized, oh, it's supposed to be 1960s ceramics. They needed to capitalize the C in ceramics, but they didn't. And then lastly, we have contemporary ceramics or contemporary ceramics with the capital C for the ceramics not capitalized. So it's, again, difficult to read. Okay, so next let's talk about URLs. I have not found a way unless, and maybe somebody else has found a way, but at this time, you cannot hyperlink text in your social media platforms. That was always a nice, easy way to make your content look nice and clean. If you had a really big URL with long, long characters, you could just have that hyperlink. Made it look clean and nice and easy for people to access. Can't do that in your social media platforms. So you may want to consider using a link shortener to help you reduce those characters. Bitly is a good example. I use that one all the time. Tiny URL, Owly, which is with Hootsuite. Now, I will say, while some of these are free for the most part, they are usually at a freemium, meaning if you want to have to edit the back end of it or to customize it, you may be limited into how many links you can create per month. I will also note that somebody had reported some difficulty with Tiny URL with their work system being able to access a link that had been created with Tiny URL. So it might be something you want to investigate. Now, I also want to mention that Twitter will reduce your links to 23 characters. So they will automatically do that. So if you're creating your X post, you plop your URL in there, and when it generates it, it will actually reduce the link to 23 characters. So it's essentially generating its own link for you. Now, Facebook does something different. They truncate your link. And that's the example I have here. So this is from South Arts. Again, I'm not going to read the whole post, but this is about a jazz road artist tour that they're doing with April Webb and sounds of A&R. And then SOAR, SOAR, will be part of that as well. So at the bottom, they're saying to learn more about April Webb and SOAR and see where they're touring, they provide a URL. And I'm going to read it as Facebook displays it. It's https://www.southart.org/sounds-ar-2023-06-24. So there's a couple of things I don't like about this link. One is, even though Facebook truncated it, it's still really long. And that worries me, because if this is as far as Facebook truncated it, how much did they truncate out of this link? And so as a screen reader user, I would still be hearing everything that I just read out loud. It's still going to be very, very long and arduous. The second thing to think about is, how are other people sharing your information? So I have friends who they love to take screenshots of their, who they're following on like Instagram or something like that and share it with me. So maybe there's an event going on and they want to, share that info with me. So they'll take a screenshot of their Instagram post that they're looking at and then text it to me. Well, if it's an image, I'm not going to be able to click on a link because it's not an actual link, it's just a picture of one. The other thing is, even as I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, well, I could just type it out. Well, all I'm seeing is what Facebook's displayed, and they've truncated the link. So where that ... is, I don't know where that goes. I don't know what's supposed to be in the place of those dots. So again, just something to think about. If you can keep your links shorter, I think it's cleaner experience. And then that way, if you don't like to make hyperlinks in general, having those shorter links is an easier way for people to share the info. Next, we're going to talk about emojis. And emojis are great. They're fun. They do serve a purpose, but we want to make sure that we're using them to our advantage and to make sure that other people are really getting what we want out of that experience. So every emoji has a specific description, and that description is read by the screen reader. So if I'm somebody with a visual impairment using a screen reader, and I see and you post the specific emoji that's displayed here. I like to describe it as the one with the big eyes and a happy face and a big happy face, like he's got like teeth showing. And so this specific emoji would be described as grinning face with big eyes. Okay, so it's not just like for us, when we look at that image, we kind of already know it. We know what it's supposed to elicit, but for a screen reader, because they can't see it, it gets a description, which is great. But now that we know that, let's think about some things. When using your emojis, less is more, right? Think about how many times we've seen posts where there's just either a string of emojis or emojis all over the place. It can be very, very distracting and very difficult, not only for us to read, but people with visual impairments. Also, you want to use emojis over emoticons. So for any of you who are old enough to remember emoticons, that is where we are using our keys and our keyboards to create essentially emojis, but it looks like text. So if I wanted to make a smiley face, it would be the colon with the right parentheses. Now, if I'm a screen reader user, it's not going to read it as happy face or happy emoticon. It's going to read it as colon and parentheses. So it's not really conveying what I want it to convey. Next, you always want to put emojis at the end of phrases. So let's think about our grinning face with big eyes, and I'm writing a post to my fans or my coworkers, and I want to shout out to everybody. And I'm going to say, hey, everybody, grinning face with big eyes. It's a great day in Alabama. Sunshine, tree, whatever, right? So like if I keep putting all of these emoticons everywhere or emojis in the middle of phrases, it's really going to get distracting for people to really understand the message I'm trying to convey. And then if you noticed, and the first post that I showed you with the national park, they had that dinosaur emoji at the very, very end of their phrase. And then lastly, don't put emojis in your username. It makes it difficult for people to find you. And again, just bad etiquette for screen reader users. And then lastly, you always want to look up the descriptions of your emojis at emojipedia.org because you always want to make sure that that emoji means what you think it means before you post it. So next, we're going to briefly talk about captioning video. Several platforms now have the ability to do auto captioning, which is great. It takes a lot of the work out for us, but you always want to still check those auto captions. 98, 99% accuracy is still not 100%. So you always want to go back through and check those. Several platforms have added the ability to upload the SRT file. So that's if you remember from previous webinars, when you are creating a video and you want to have captioning added to that video, you can create a caption file or an SRT file, and it will then put the captions with that video. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube all have that ability to upload those files. There are great resources like CapCut and CapWing. I know that those are really popular for people that are using social media and like to make videos for those. It's very easy for you to add your captioning through there. And then something to really think about why captioning is important for your videos, not just for people with hearing impairments, but 85% of Facebook video views are with the sound off. And I can say from personal experience, when I'm looking at my Instagram or my Facebook, I usually have my volume turned off. And so if I see somebody talking and there's no auto captions, even if I think it's interesting and I say, oh, I'm going to watch it later, I'm never going to find that link ever again. I'm not going to be able to find that post to go, oh, I need to rewatch that one. And God forbid I click on it because then it makes all the noise and sound come up. So by having those captions in there, you really are going to get your people able to engage with that content without making extra effort for them. All right, so we're going to talk about designing graphics. And a lot of what we're going to talk about here are similar things that we've mentioned in creating accessible content. And that best social designs are mindful of these things. So we're talking about color and contrast, color palettes, font and weight, and layout and well-sourced images. So the first one we want to talk about is color and contrast. So the contrast between text and the background should be at least 4.5 to 1 to be in accordance with the WCAG guidelines or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So the picture over here to the left shows you different examples of color contrast between text and the background and their ratios and if they failed or not. So here we have 3 columns. In the middle column, you're seeing the same text with different colors backgrounds. So the top one is ratio 2.01, and it's a green background with red text saying hello. And of course, that means it's failed. I'm going to skip down a couple to ratio 4.03 to 1, and that's a gray background with yellow text saying hello, but that still failed. When we go to ratio 4.49 to 1, we're looking at a light blue background with like a royal blue text, and that still failed because it wasn't 4.5. And then ratio 4.57 to 1 is the yellow background with red text, and that is passing. Now, something to think about with the WCAG guidelines and the 4.5 ratio, depending on where you're posting or where you're displaying this text, that ratio may change based off of the size of text you need. Now, when we're looking at things like social media posts, your text is going to generally be smaller because most people are looking on their phones. So yeah, that contrast needs to be up there because you're not going to be able to enlarge the text to get better contrast between the background. And then next, when you're looking at creating your post, if you're going to put text over an image, you really shouldn't do it, especially if you have a very busy image that's distracting and you can't really determine where the text is. But if you do decide to put text over an image, you really should use a drop shadow to create more contrast. So that way essentially that text will pop out a little bit more against that image. So the next one is talking about building color palettes. And I have a graphic in the top right. And for some of you, if it's giving you a headache or it's making your eyes hurt or something like that, please feel free to look away. And I'll try and go through this one as quickly as possible. So when we're building color palettes, don't rely on colors to solely convey meaning, right? We don't want people to have to interpret what our logo means because of the colors that we're using, because not everybody can see colors exactly the same, or if at all. When you're building your color palettes, you really want to build accessible color palettes from the start of your design. So if you're making logos or themes for your social media posts or specific graphics that you're going to use repeatedly, really try to think about what a good accessible color palette will be from the start. Next, you want to avoid color combinations that create vibrating text. So this image that I have in this top right corner is an example of that. So I have this red background with this very bright blue lorem text over top of it. Now, for some people, it could feel like the text is moving or wiggling or bouncing. For some people, it just almost feels like their eyes are hurting because they're just staring straight at like a neon sign. For me, sometimes depending on the color combination and the type of text, it can almost feel like it's out of focus because it feels like it's moving just enough that I'm not sure if, I feel like I can't adjust my eyes to really read it. So some additional examples that include red and green and brown, or green and blue. A good resource to look at is color.adobe.com. They have a contrast checker as well as a colorblind safe palette builder. So not necessarily free, but definitely a good resource to potentially look at. All right, I have made the evil graphic go away, so feel free to put your face back towards the screen if you wish. Next, we're going to talk about font and weight. So make sure your font has enough weight so that it contrasts with the background, right? Again, making sure that it's easily readable. We want people to not have to struggle to read your posts. Avoid dainty or swirling fonts that are difficult to read. Avoid putting your fonts in italics. Here is a list of some common and free accessible fonts. They're actually, the way I posted them, they're just all the exact same font, but I've just listed them here for you. So we're looking at Arial, Futura Bold, Verdanda, Helvetica, Calibri, and Tahoma. So these are all really good kind of standard fonts to start with. If you're not sure, these are good go-tos. Next, we're going to talk about images and layout. So, of course, make sure your images are respectful and represent a wide range of your community. Avoid confusing layouts. Keep the flow of information readable. If I don't know where my eyes are supposed to go next, I don't know what I'm supposed to be reading, I'm not going to get the information I need to get from your text. Be concise. Avoid clustering information or walls of text, right? Just good basic design that we've talked about before. And then lastly, following reading patterns. So again, that predictability of left, right, etc., depending on the language you're posting in. All right. So instead of me struggling to plug in my phone and hope it's popping up on the screen, I want to take you to a website that actually they have such a good resource that I'm just going to show you that instead of, again, walking through on my own device here. So I'm going to take you to Accessible Social, their website. They have great resources. And show you walkthroughs of how to add your image accessibility by platform. Before I scroll down to those though, I do highly recommend checking out their main menu. They've got some great resources, just general accessibility, social accessibility 101. Again, more information about audio and visual accessibility, etc. So now we're on this image accessibility by platform. And this site is great. They update it frequently, especially as all these new social platforms are popping up. If there's an ability to add alt text, they are finding it and making these wonderful walkthroughs for you. So I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but I just want to let you know what's in here. So they have the Facebook, showing you the difference between the desktop and mobile. And I want to show you Instagram because I think this is a really good, at least for me, and I've just gotten so used to adding things through alt text that I haven't trained my brain yet to add my image description into the caption. Although whenever I tell people it takes 3 different screens to add alt text, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just put it in the captions? So this screenshot that we have here, they've shown us the 3 screens that you'll take for Instagram. So this is the Instagram mobile platform. And the first image over on our left is just what it looks like when you're adding a new post to Instagram, right? This looks familiar to us. We have the picture, the little thumbnail, the caption. They've put their emoji at the end, the purple heart. Now we're going to scroll down to the bottom of the screen, and it's even in smaller and lighter font. You'll see where it says accessible settings. Now, when you click on that, it takes you to advanced settings, not accessible, advanced settings. It's taking you to this middle screen now and says advanced settings. You're seeing things like and view counts, if you want to turn off comments, etc. Again, all the way down at the bottom, we're looking for accessibility, and then you'll see write alt text as another option. So you'll click on that one, and it takes you to your third screen. So now it's the thumbnail of the image, and then there will be a text box where I can type in my image description or my alt text. If I had multiple pictures, you would actually see each thumbnail would have its own text box. So like I said, please check out the Accessible Social. These were just absolutely phenomenal to me, just very clearly written out, describing, explaining where to go. They also mentioned, because I know some people ask about, well, I use a social media manager, something like a Hootsuite or Agorapulse, or the Meta Business Suite. Am I able to add my alt text through these media managers? And the answer is, if they're good ones, yes. So yes, you can add them in Agorapulse, you can add them in Hootsuite, etc. Here they have added a section specifically talking about the Meta Business Suite. And how to find that place to add that alt text in there as well. So my thing to people is, if it's not in there, you may want to look at a different media management tool. So here, they show you all of the media management tools and the apps that they support. So they've listed all of them here based off of which tab I've selected. So for Facebook, for Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. So it's telling you which ones you can go in and edit. So with Instagram, you can only add your media management tools can only add alt text for Meta Business and Sked Social. So something to think about when you're looking at your platforms, etc. So again, Instagram, it's probably just easier to put it in the captions itself instead of trying to add it to that alt text area. All right, next I want to go over some resources for you. The first one is a resource document that I made with a couple of colleagues. And really just gives you some additional information and links to the content that we talked about today. So the first one, just several links on alternative text, not just how to add it specifically to your platforms, but also like what good alt text looks like and how to write good image descriptions. We have an article about Camel Case. I provided the URLs for Bitly and TinyURL and Owly. It was Microsoft Defender. That's the one it was for TinyURL. So Microsoft Defender is having some issues with TinyURL. So you may want to avoid it or at least get some more information before you go that route. We've given you the link for the Emojipedia. And for captioning videos, again, we provided all those different captioning resources as well as a few others. Some really good links for designing graphics. So looking at the contrast and the color checkers, and then also just, a text over image tool checker. So to see again, how readable is it, as well as some additional resources. So either other organizations' accessibility guides and tutorials, or just good articles that provide an overview of what good accessible social media looks like. All right, so thank you so much for attending our webinar. We hope you learned a lot. We do ask if you can just take a moment and complete our survey. This helps us in several ways. One is this data helps us in our reporting for the end of the year for our grant that we're part of. And then also it just lets us know how we're doing, if this is content that you find useful, but also you have the opportunity to request specific topics or areas of interest. And that's something that we really strive and value to get our hands on, because we want to make sure that this content is useful for you. So that link is going to be www.surveymonkey.com/r/capital X, the number 6, capital M, capital L, capital Z, capital W, and a capital B. And again, I will have that link in the descriptions, video description. Or if you prefer, we have the QR code over to our left. And then lastly, we want to invite you to our next webinar. It will be at the end of October, October 26th. And this is Welcome to APTAT. We are getting ready to launch or open our demonstration center here in the Homewood office of ADRS. But we also want to let you know about all of our programs and services that we provide through our AT ACT program. But we'll be highlighting some of the new inventory and our lending library and our demo center as well. So please click on that registration or go to another bit.ly link. It is bit.ly/4, the number 6, capital L, and then lowercase m, c, n, X. And again, I'll have that link in the description as well. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month.